Sean O'Malley isn't really worried about facing the #1 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. In preparation for his upcoming fight against Petr Yan, he released a mock interview with him on his Instagram page, and it's certainly interesting to say the least. Today, we'll be taking a look at that along with some other related news. So, let's dive on in. First, what happened in the mock interview? In a video posted on O'Malley's Instagram account, he sat down with his up-and-coming opponent for an interview with Shmariel Shmelwani, an interviewer who was meant to represent Ariel Helwani. In the interview, Yan is represented by a dummy that goes above and beyond in his imitation of him. Petr doesn't really speak throughout the interview, considering he's an inanimate object. It ended with Sean asking Petr why his country invaded Ukraine and him giving Petr a punch. Even though this might be a little funny for his target audience, this interview is definitely going to blow up in Sean's face if he can't pull off a victory against him at UFC 280. Up next, O'Malley claims he's the best striker in the UFC. Sean O'Malley is currently the number 13 ranked bantamweight in the UFC, and he doesn't even come close to the top of the list when it comes to his pound-for-pound ranking. But despite all that, O'Malley believes that he's the best striker in the UFC right now. When speaking about his upcoming fight, O'Malley said that he doesn't think that there's going to be a lot of wrestling or grappling during their duel. He said that he's expecting it to be more like a fight against Pedro Munoz. Back then, Sean expected Pedro to wrestle a bit more, but he kept his distance and waited for the perfect opportunity to strike. He added that this match is likely going to be a kickboxing feat, admitting that Petr might be the best boxer in the division, but he himself is the best pure MMA striker in the company. No one's really sure what O'Malley means by pure MMA striker, but regardless of what it is, it's likely that he's not the best striker in the UFC in any way. Coming up, Sean O'Malley wants to be more like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor hasn't really been the most respected fighter in the UFC as of late. Even though no one can deny his talent, especially at its peak, McGregor has been lambasted in recent years due to his sheer inability to handle losses. He always comes up with an excuse or berates his opponents for no reason. But as far as his ability to draw goes, he's unparalleled. O'Malley recently said on his YouTube channel that he's amazed at the kind of drawing power that McGregor has. After all, he headlined 5 of the 6 most bought pay-per-view fights in UFC history. There might not ever be a bigger draw than McGregor, but O'Malley says that he wants to be just like Conor. He has said numerous times in the past that he doesn't really care about winning or losing, but he mentioned that he does care about doing big pay-per-views, getting his name out there, and getting fans to buy because of him. So far in his career, O'Malley has never headlined a pay-per-view, but that might just change at UFC 280 when he faces Petr Yan for the first time. Next, TJ Dillashaw thinks Petr Yan will run through O'Malley. There are a lot of people that believe that Sean O'Malley might just win his fight at UFC 280. After all, he has only been defeated once in his entire career, and he has been on fire in the past few years, aside from the no contest. TJ Dillashaw recently gave an interview to MMA Junkie where he praised Sean for even getting to this point. He thinks that Sean is a really popular guy, a good draw, and good for MMA in general. However, when it came to predicting the outcome of the Yan O'Malley fight, Dillashaw believes that this should be an easy win for Yan. He said that despite having fans and the hype, O'Malley has simply never fought someone of Petr Yan's caliber. He said that he just doesn't see any kind of scenario where O'Malley could even possibly win. The fight is likely going to be a big draw, bigger than any other opponent that Yan could have had. However, this fight can still go either way, because you can simply never count out O'Malley. Up next, Ricky Simon thinks Sean O'Malley is the least threatening man in the division. Now that Sean O'Malley is going face-to-face against the top-ranked bantamweight in the UFC, a lot of people have come out of the woodworks to question his abilities. One of these people is Ricky Simon, a fellow welterweight ranked number 11 in the UFC, compared to Sean's number 11 ranking. Simon took more than a few pot shots at the Montanian fighter during a latest interview. Ricky said that he was looking forward to facing Sean O'Malley one day. Why? It's because the match would be a huge draw. It would get a lot of eyes on himself, and Ricky believes that he could easily beat O'Malley. He called it the least dangerous and easiest potential fight of his life. He also talked about how skinny O'Malley is, pointing at his hips and his legs. But it's likely that Ricky Simon is simply trying to get O'Malley riled up so he can eventually respond and gets Dana White interested in a feud between the two. He has been trying to get a fight with Sean for the better part of the past 2 months. It doesn't really seem like Sean is all that interested in taking him on though. So far, he hasn't really responded to anything that Simon has said, let alone his offer to fight him. If O'Malley ends up losing to Yan at UFC 280, a fight between the two Americans might just become more likely. Coming up, Jake Paul claims that he was on certain substances with O'Malley. Jake Paul isn't really the most respected guy in the world of MMA. In fact, he's mostly seen as a joke, but he and Sean are actually quite close friends. And while having Sean as a guest talking about his upcoming fight on his podcast, Jake Paul recalled a time when the two used to party together. He said something that raised a lot of eyebrows during the interview. He said that they were both on, quote, certain substances. Now, if this was weed, Jake Paul would have have just said it outright. Sean has never been shy about being a pothead, but this was likely some sort of substance that is banned by the UFC, which is why Paul didn't mention it. If it was any sort of performance-enhancing drug at all, O'Malley could actually get into quite a bit of trouble. However, it is unlikely that Paul was talking about PEDs. It was likely just a party drug that just happened to be banned by the UFC. This still didn't stop fans from going crazy in the comments and trying to speculate on what it might have been though. Now let's look at some other related news. First, Makhachev doubts Oliveira's faith in himself. Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev are set to go one-on-one against each other at UFC 280 in a fight that might just determine the #1 contender for the lightweight title. However, Makhachev isn't fully convinced that even Oliveira thinks that he can win the fight. Makhachev said that the odds are obviously in his own favor and that Oliveira simply doesn't stand a chance. He said that deep down, even Oliveira probably knows that Makhachev is going to win. However, the stats certainly line up in Oliveira's favor. He has won 5 fights in a row, and he's now ranked as the #1 lightweight in the UFC. This main event can really go either way. Next, Justin Gaethje says the Oliveira-Makhachev fight won't be one-sided. A lot of people that have been following Makhachev and his recent fights as of late seem to think that the Russian is going to completely dominate Oliveira in his upcoming fight at UFC 280. However, Justin Gaethje, #3 ranked lightweight, thinks otherwise. He told reporters backstage that he's 100% sure that Makhachev won't just run over Oliveira. He said that he has fought Charles before and that there's no way that man can possibly go down without a fight, no matter how good his opponent is. The odds might be in Makhachev's favor if we go by past performance, but don't count out the Brazilian just yet. And finally, Oliveira targets Conor McGregor for upcoming fight. It's not clear as to when Conor McGregor will make his UFC return after the devastating loss against Dustin Poirier at UFC 264, but Oliveira is one guy that has his sights set on him. He recently said in an interview that a fight against McGregor would be perfect. He said that if he wins against Makhachev at UFC 280, he's sure that the UFC can find a way to arrange a fight between him and McGregor in Brazil sometime in 2023. Would McGregor accept such a fight though? He doesn't really seem to have the best relations with the MMA world anymore, and he's more interested in his extravagant vacations. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you think O'Malley could somehow pull off a victory? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this. We'll see you in the next one.